Desperate housewives and injustice by the police. Noting recently the arrest of a young pregnant mother in Victoria, Australia, simply because she wanted to hold a protest against the lockdown there and voice her opinion, and she was only 28 years old and had children and a partner, and pregnant, and was in her pajamas when they arrested her for a post on Facebook. They actually put her in handcuffs. They didn't even do that to Israel Folau when he did his rant against gay people. Oh, that's right, the new law's given the police greater powers in accusing the young mum, pregnant mind you, of inciting because she wanted to run a demonstration. This double standard of ridiculous of this begs belief. They even put handcuffs on the poor girl in front of her children, who proceeded to film it and put it out on the internet, where it went everywhere. Why do this to a harmless young mother? Surely a warning would have sufficed to stop the protest, but oh no, they had to frighten her with their authority and actually handcuff and arrest her for inciting what? A peaceful protest. It sounds like the new laws in Hong Kong that made it against the law to protest and put the poor pro-democracy students in prison. So worried for them. So are we now copying China's communist actions against their own people? Is the Premier in Victoria doing that? Australia, where is your heart? That young woman was harmless, but she may well become an activist for what was done to her for merely standing up for the right to speak her opinion. Obviously, to make an example of her, the police, because no one is allowed to be against the lockdown because it is dangerous and risky because of the virus, they say. But really, I think it's a matter of control. Never mind Daniel Andrews, the Premier, who made dangerous, risky actions, letting shoddy security guards run a quarantine for overseas visitors in their hotels, which let the virus break out through their lack of infection control or understanding. They were so ignorant. Daniel Andrews should be the one wearing handcuffs. He is the culprit behind all this mess. Victoria was still in stage 3, looking forward to getting out to a normal life, and were then locked down again, callously, due to Dan Andrews' neglect of keeping overseas visitors in quarantine and letting that very dangerous virus get out to the rest of Victoria. He should be ashamed of himself for treating his people like this, and this harmless young mother. As if a criminal, when she was just a caring mother who lost her job and cared what was happening to everyone in Victoria. As she said, she wanted to do something for human rights. Daniel Andrews said there shouldn't be any protests as it's too dangerous. Well, there shouldn't be any security guards taking care of quarantine. It is too dangerous. There should be health workers and army and police running these quarantines. He is a hypocrite to boot, the pot calling the kettle black. A recent article in the Good Weekend of Sydney Morning Herald by Brooke Turner, 2020, September 5th, noticed that recent research on loneliness saw that if humans do not have connection with other humans, they start to lose mental health, becoming more depressed, anxious, angry, stressed, irritable, and emotionally exhausted with the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Dr. Van Hoof, the professor, was doing an article on what happens to those who have been quarantined for the World Health Organization. Go figure. We always knew humans need each other. Is it any wonder people are reacting in Victoria? Humans crave human involvement and connection as much as food. As Turner noticed, it is a necessity just as much. The article also said the pandemic consequences of lockdowns were fast, and largely improvised experiment in mass isolation. To call it an experiment has me worried. It is a cruel experiment one then. If indeed the governments are doing it to see what happens, they should then suffer with their people and stop trying to manipulate their people with fear becoming the main controlling tool. Perhaps they should be taking pay cuts too, because they've not locked down everybody's livelihoods and businesses. People are reacting to extended lockdowns such as those in Victoria with indignation and the need to be free to be with other people, as it is actually a human basic need. And when I've done research in psychology and also social science, there are theories on why humans can be irrational. And it gets to the point, if a human is pushed too far and they suffer too much, they won't even be rational in what they do. If their back's against the wall, they will get out and take action no matter what the consequences. That's why people keep getting fined in Victoria. No matter how many fines he lays on them, the Premier, people will still keep reacting because they are desperate and they need human contact. They are acting like prisoners who need to break out of isolation and depression. We saw the aged care people die due to lack of care by organisations, aged care, who did not protect them from the virus, including the state government and the federal government. No protections. Locking them down only made their lives more miserable, and it was cruel. Their blood is on the hands of the federal government and Scott Morrison for not caring enough to protect the old, knowing what they saw overseas in the UK and everywhere else, in Italy and Spain. They don't matter, the old people, in the economy of things, no doubt. In the end, it is human survival to have others in your life, and it's not just on technology. Humans need each other in person. That is how the human race has survived so far. Noted by Turner's article, smartphones and social media have been added a whole new layer of isolation. And when the pandemic came, it made it worse for those who were already isolated due to what technology was doing. But what did they say? Use the technology again, including the aged and disabilities people. Noted also in an article, the same article by Turner in the Good Weekend, that in Japan, due to poverty and growing socialization, the oldies, the fastest growing crime demographic of over 65-year-olds, are the new criminal cohort, committing minor crimes as they want to be arrested to get the subsidized community care of jail. Go figure. New buildings have come to be added to the prisons to accommodate the quadrupling rise of elderly offenders. So that's real desperation, isn't it? When old people start committing crimes just to get into prison so they'll get looked after and they'll have company. And as we know, in aged care, they're lucky to get a frozen peanut butter sandwich. But in prison, you get 3 meals a day. They also have cameras to see what's happening. So if anyone beats you up, that's seen. That's not in aged care here. It's also not in disabilities. So basically, you're better off being a prisoner than in our aged care system or in the normal community where they're feeling isolated and driven by poverty and isolation. And also the Japanese old people feel that their young people, in a way, have become reclusive due to technology. Their young people aren't even looking out for them or interacting with them, so they're making the old people feel desperate and lonely, and that's what's happening. All the best, Andrea.